the only thing people care about is if you can shine a light on something that's going to hurt them that they don't know about. Now, we have to communicate this in a way. Imagine this scenario. Imagine if I sent you an email and you didn't know who I was, and I said, I'm the best sales trainer. Would you believe me? Probably not. Why? Because of course I'm going to say that. I'm biased. I have commission breath. But we see this all the time in emails. We can't tell people things because we're biased. We can't say we're going to generate lots of emails for them. We can't say we're going to reduce time. We can't say we're the best. We can't say we're the only because we're biased. The gentleman that was making the documentary films, it would be great if we could say we're the only ones that are doing this and we're awesome. But unfortunately, even if we are, the prospects don't believe us because we're selling something. So prospects are afraid of you. So we have to be a little more subtle. We can't tell people our value proposition. We have to let other people discover it for themselves. Because if we're pitching, prospects are going to enter what I call the zone of resistance. It's the same thing that happens if you're in a mall and a kiosk person says, "Can I ask you a question?" You're going to say no thanks and keep walking because you know you're about to be pitched. And pitching is perceived as a threat, especially in emails, especially coming from salespeople. You also can't do stuff like this. If I could 10x your revenue, would you be interested? I call this promising the moon and the stars. When you are too hypey in an email, it's going to set off the zone of resistance because it sounds too good to be true. We can't say things like, if I told you something interested, would you be interested? These are what are called leading questions. You're asking a question that's in your best interest. And whenever prospects feel like they're being led to a desired answer, they're going to enter the zone of resistance. So what's the way out? We actually have to stop persuading in our copy. And we have to do what I call poke the bear. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm going to show you some examples. We're going to ask a question, not about a value proposition, but the question is going to shine a light on a problem that our prospects probably don't know about and allow them to scratch their head and think, I'm not sure. What do you mean? You remember this from the running example and the grit guard example, right? The question that caught my interest was, how are you ensuring your wash mitt won't scratch your car? Now, notice this question. It's neutral. I'm not pitching anything. I'm not trying to persuade anyone. I'm merely getting someone to scratch their head and think, what do you mean? Well, how do I know? I better read the next sentence. I call these illumination questions. They're tricky to write, and they usually start with, how are you going to? How are you going to ensure? What are you doing to? Example for the insoles. How are you reducing the risk of plantar fasciitis caused by 10-mile runs? What do you mean? I run 10 miles. I don't want to get that. I better keep reading. So again, these are questions that are shining a light on problems so that other people can come to their own conclusions. Example for Truebill. So if you're not familiar with this app, imagine you subscribe to a bunch of streaming services. If you're like I am, you have no idea what you've subscribed to or what your wife has subscribed to, and it's possible you're paying for subscription services that you forgot about. Truebill fixes that problem. How are you ensuring you're not paying for subscriptions you forgot about? Question mark should be. Not, if I could 10x your revenue. Not, do you want more sales? Not, if I told you something interesting, would you be interested? So let's see how we can write these emails. I call this the 4T framework because each section starts with a T. The first is called a trigger. And I want to give you this in the example of a real company. And then we'll go through a couple of examples and then you're going to write one. So let me give you the story map for Warmbox. They're selling to someone who's responsible for sending out cold emails, typically RevOps. The job they want to be done is they want to send out cold emails. The problem is that they might not know about is that about 51% of those emails land in spam. They don't even get delivered to the inbox, even if they're amazing emails. So Warmbox has a way in which they increase that delivery rate to about 98%. More get delivered, more people read them, higher the responses, more meetings, more revenue. So the first sentence is a trigger sentence. What is it that we can notice about the prospect that ladders back to what we sell? So in this example, this is called a technology trigger. There are ways to know what technology companies are using products like Built With. So we could say to Josh, who's our prospect, looks like you're using SalesLoft. That's going to stand out in my inbox because I am in fact using SalesLoft. I'm going to show you a couple different examples of these. It's a technology trigger. So in the case of the crane, while I was pressing earlier, looks like you have your own cranes or looks like you don't have your own cranes. Right? That's going to be a very relevant sentence. Here's another example. This is called an open position trigger. Seems like you're doubling your outbound team over the next 12 months, which suggests you're sending lots of cold emails. I'm taking that trigger event and I'm making a deduction. I can read that they're doubling their outbound team, which suggests they're doing this. I'm making a deduction. If A, then B is probably true. Another example. Notice you're hiring SDRs, which suggests you might be sending lots of cold emails. There's literally about 9 of these different triggers. The key to the trigger is it has to relate to the following sentence. Which is going to be the think sentence, or the question that we just talked about earlier. So here's what it sounds like altogether. Notice you're hiring SDRs, which suggests you might be sending cold emails. How are you ensuring cold emails don't land in spam? See the framework there? We're starting with something that we observed about the prospect, something that they said, something that we gleaned from their website, something that we gleaned from their profile, something that we gleaned from a pre-research call that we made, some intelligence that we have that relates to the problem we solve. This is not, hey, Josh, noticed you went to Florida State University. How are you ensuring cold emails don't land in spam? Those two things have nothing to do with each other. They have to elegantly tie together. Notice how the green relates to the yellow. Next sentence is called third-party validation. We cannot toot our own horns. What we can do is let other people toot them for us. Third-party validation. What have we done for other companies? That's better. So, Google and Salesforce, these are similar companies to the ones we're prospecting, are using us to deliver 94% of cold emails to inboxes compared to 12% before. It's the contrast that sells, so to speak. 94% only is interesting as it relates to 12%. It's the contrast. Wow, that sounds like a big improvement. Notice I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm letting the customers do the talking. Notice it's also one sentence. And then I'm going to give a little more detail. This is a subset of third-party validation because the prospect is asking themselves, how does it work? And the bridging phrase I'm going to use is, it involves a warm-up tool that raises your inbox reputation to boost deliverability. That's how it works. And it's only one sentence. Only one. The reason we want that sentence is we got to make it crispy and specific to stand out. Look how specific that is. It explains exactly how it works in one elegant sentence.